Fantasy football fast forward, Martin joins RB Elite. Rodgers' roles last year was the year of the quarterback. This week, we might have celebrated a return to the fantasy tradition of running backs leading the way, led by Bucs rookie Doug Martin. Martin rushed for a legendary 251 yards and 4 touchdowns. Adrian Peterson looks as productive as he has ever been with 182 yards and 2 TDs. Even Chris Johnson looked more CJ2K-like again with an 80-yard TD and 141 rushing yards against a very good Bears run defense. We said it was going to be redemption week. We didn't know it was going to be fantasy redemption for backs, harkening back to the Marshall Faulk and Priest Holmes era. Martin's back-to-back monster weeks enter him into the fantasy elite, where Peterson also returns to after his incredibly quick recovery from reconstructive knee surgery. We break down the game changers and all the noteworthy performances in the Week 9 fantasy football fast forward. 1. RG3's decline. It was unpopular here to suggest Robert Griffin III was going to decline down the stretch. Well, that prediction sure looks spot on now. And you're stuck holding the bag. RG3 heads to his bye week with his value his lowest since his surprising rookie season started. You can't even deal him now. And you can't feel confident in any of his targets. Who is starting Josh Morgan, Logan Powelson or Leonard Ankerson in fantasy? And who is happy they start Santana Moss 1 catch for 2 yards this week? RG3 is a dynamic talent. He just has no help. Your best hope is Pierre Garcon-Foot comes back healthy and proves productive at some point. 2. CJ2K, time to trade him away. Typical CJ. He produced another big game when you least expected it. The Bears' run defense had him mostly bottled up until that late 80-yard TD turned a Blade into a 141-yard monster effort. Johnson will now go back into starting lineups in many leagues, but remember how good the Dolphins' run defense is. Johnson is going to continue to frustrate you. Instead of putting him back in your starting lineup, put him on the trade block. This big week makes it a great time to trade him. His value might not get higher. And this might be the trade deadline week in many leagues. 3. Jermichael Finley can't hurt you in a bye week. That bye week can't come soon enough for one of the biggest busts of the tight end position in fantasy this season. Finley was held to just 1 catch for 6 yards and thankfully you won't have to start him in Week 10. The bad news is you cannot cut him either, and Week 11 will return that same question mark back to your weekly decisions. The only good news is his troublesome shoulder injury will get its first good, long rest. 4. James Starks should be considered. Starks got 17 carries to Alex Green's 11. There might be a turnover at the position through the bye week. You might want to take that early flyer on Starks, just in case. 5. Now introducing, Bills WR Donald Jones. He might be the best wide receiver you don't know. He is likely unowned in your fantasy league and he will be facing the suspect Pats defense next week. Pick this hidden gem up off waivers. The good, Aaron Rodgers, Packers. It doesn't matter who he has to throw to. Take away Greg Jennings' sports hernia surgery and Jordy Nelson hamstring and now ankle and he will make fantasy stars out of James Jones and Randall Cobb. Rodgers is going to be the biggest bye week hole to fill next week, but at least Nelson and Finley will get much needed rest. Rodgers is going to enjoy a huge stretch run, regardless of Jennings, Nelson, Finley or any of this running back's health status. The bad, same old Panthers RB mess. Okay, we finally get some clarity. Jonathan Stewart is the feature back. Then, Tangela Williams goes out and scores a 30-yard TD. The Panthers' RB situation is 1 step forward and 2 steps back, seemingly perpetually. You cannot like any of the Panthers' backs against the Broncos' run defense next week. The good news is at least Cam Newton did something for his owners with a passing and rushing TD with no turnovers.